The meddling mother of King George III. Princess Augusta of Saxe-Gotha's life was marked by a series of tragedies and intrigues, from the shattered dreams of her youth when she envisioned becoming queen, but instead married a manipulative prince, to her tumultuous relationship with her in-laws, King George II and Queen Caroline. Her story is one of relentless hardship, and as we delve into the complexities of her royal journey, we witness a young, naive princess navigating treacherous family dynamics, falling victim to her husband's cruel schemes, and enduring a harrowing childbirth that would ultimately lead to her banishment from the royal court. Princess Augusta of Saxe-Gotha, known as the mother of Mad King George, endured a series of unfortunate events in her life. While her dreams of becoming queen were shattered due to her husband's sudden death, she witnessed her son's descent into madness as he ascended to the throne. Regrettably, her own behaviour took a dark turn, making her one of history's most exacerbating mother-in-laws, as those familiar with Queen Charlotte's prequel in Bridgerton might attest. Augusta's royal journey began in the small German principality of Gotha in 1719. At just 16, she was married off to Prince Frederick, the son of King George II of Great Britain and the Prince of Wales, which seemed like the start of a fairy tale match, but quickly turned into a nightmare. Though Augusta likely believed she was marrying her Prince Charming, Frederick proved to be a walking red flag. He was significantly older than her and notorious for his debauchery, including gambling, drinking, and womanizing. Frederick's motivations for the marriage were dubious at best, and it turned out that Frederick, deep in debt due to his extravagant lifestyle, had married Augusta solely for her dowry. Unfortunately, Augusta's inability to communicate in English or French, in addition to her native German, further complicated matters. This language barrier was particularly challenging given that she entered a royal court where all three languages were spoken. Augusta's naivety was also striking. She had little knowledge of adult matters, as evidenced by courtiers observing her playing with dolls in her first year as the Princess of Wales. Frederick, taking advantage of her inexperience, hatched a cruel plan. He arranged for his lover, Lady Hamilton, to become one of Augusta's ladies of the bedchamber, convincing Augusta that this move disproved any rumours about his relationship with her, while granting himself greater access to his mistress. Frederick's cruelty towards Augusta, however, was just beginning to escalate. Augusta's challenging relationship with her in-laws. When Princess Augusta married Prince Frederick, she entered a marriage without fully understanding the complexities of her husband's family dynamics. Frederick had been embroiled in a long-standing feud with his parents, King George II and Queen Caroline of Ansbach, to the point of establishing a rival court in opposition to them. Navigating in-law relationships is rarely easy, and Augusta found herself in a precarious situation, which she unfortunately handled very poorly. She became a pawn in Frederick's scheme. Frederick, already using Augusta as a pawn in his family feud, escalated his manipulative tactics. He began instructing Augusta to deliberately annoy his mother, Queen Caroline, in any way possible. Augusta, still a teenager, obediently followed his directives, which included arriving late to the chapel and rudely pushing past the Queen Consort to reach her seat. The situation took an embarrassing turn. Queen Caroline's disdain for Augusta. Queen Caroline, a highly intelligent woman of her time, devised a clear solution to avoid confrontations with Augusta. She instructed her attendants to direct Augusta to another chapel entrance to prevent any awkward encounters. However, Frederick persisted, demanding that Augusta make a show of refusing to enter the church if Queen Caroline had already arrived. The tension between them escalated to the point where Queen Caroline commented on Augusta's predicament, displaying her wit and composure. Queen Caroline's lack of trust. Despite her initial naivety, Augusta quickly became pregnant due to her husband's influence. This triggered suspicions from Queen Caroline, who, not trusting her daughter-in-law or her son, insisted on being present at the birth to verify the child's legitimacy. At the time, concerns about royal mothers substituting babies or infants from nearby villages were not uncommon. However, Queen Caroline's demands set off a chain of unfortunate events. A chaotic birth experience for Augusta. In July 1737, Augusta went into labour, unaware that this would become another pawn in her husband's ongoing battle with his parents. Frederick insisted that she travel by carriage to the remote St. James's Palace to ensure that his mother and father would not be present at the birth. This sudden decision led to a chaotic and unprepared birthing situation for teenage Augusta. Frederick's abrupt plan caught St. James's Palace off guard, leaving teenage Augusta to give birth to a royal heir, a girl named Augusta, on a tablecloth. It was an incredibly harrowing introduction to motherhood, with more challenges on the horizon. The Queen's insult to the child. Upon hearing the news of the birth, Queen Caroline and King George II expressed their disapproval of Frederick's actions. While Queen Caroline saw that the baby was a girl, and therefore not a suspected changeling, she made a disparaging remark, expressing relief that Augusta had given birth to a poor, ugly little she-mouse, instead of a large, fat, healthy boy. Despite her unkind words, Queen Caroline's actions were about to make a more severe turn. Banishment from court. Relations between Augusta and her in-laws reached a new low following the tumultuous birth. King George II and Queen Caroline banished Augusta and her husband from the royal court, forcing them to live in isolation at Leicester House, far removed from society. It could have been an opportunity for a quieter life, but fate had other challenges in store for them. As Augusta's life unfolded in a complex web of family dynamics and political intrigue, she faced unrelenting challenges and controversy. After Queen Caroline's ailing health failed to mend the rift between Augusta's family and her husband, Frederick's sudden death left her in an overwhelming grief. Augusta's fortunes took a turn. She found herself in a position of power as the mother of King George III, but her desire for control and the unconventional choices, like selecting the quiet Princess Charlotte as a bride for her son, would lead to further turmoil and isolation. Augusta's story is one of enduring hardship, manipulation, and a thirst for power that ultimately backfired, tarnishing her legacy in history. The ailing Queen and Frederick's attempt at reconciliation. A few months following Augusta's tumultuous journey, her adversary, Queen Caroline, fell seriously ill. Shockingly, an old ulcer had caused a portion of the Queen's intestine to protrude, posing a life-threatening condition. It was clear to everyone that Queen Caroline's time was limited, prompting even Augusta's wayward husband, Frederick, to mend fences with his mother. However, the response he received was chilling. Augusta's reputation plummets. Despite Queen Caroline's critical condition, both she and King George II remained resolute in their refusal to see their estranged son, even during the Queen's final moments. To further humiliate Augusta and Frederick, Queen Caroline, upon her eventual passing, explicitly prohibited Frederick from attending her funeral. Augusta's dreams of a charmed life after her marriage to Frederick were increasingly distant. Birth of an heir and the king's disregard. A few months after Queen Caroline's death, Augusta gave birth to a son who would later become King George III. However, her joy was marred by the premature birth, which filled her with fear for her son's survival. Additionally, King George II remained resentful and paid little attention to Augusta's children, despite her eventually having 9 of them. It wasn't until her last pregnancy that Augusta captured the king's attention, albeit for all the wrong reasons. Devastating news for Augusta. In 1751, while heavily pregnant, Augusta received devastating news. Her previously healthy husband, Frederick, had passed away suddenly at the age of 44, believed to have succumbed to a rapid pulmonary embolism. Augusta's reaction was anything but composed. Augusta's overwhelming grief. Upon learning of her husband's death, Augusta initially refused to accept the news. As the doctor described, she was brought reluctantly to the knowledge that Frederick was no more. This sudden realization dashed any remaining hopes of becoming Queen of England after enduring a difficult arranged marriage. Her situation worsened as she suffered from severe insomnia, necessitating her servants to force her into bed at an early hour. Protecting Frederick's secrets. Despite Frederick's mistreatment throughout their marriage, Augusta felt compelled to mourn his passing and safeguard his darkest secrets. Just 2 hours after his death, with only a couple of hours of fitful sleep, Augusta entered his room and burned any private, likely scandalous letters that she could find. It was more than Frederick deserved, but fate would not return the same kindness to Augusta. Augusta the outsider. Following Frederick's death, Augusta faced numerous challenges. No longer the Princess of Wales, but now a dowager, she had to care for her 8 children, with the 9th, Caroline Matilda, on the way. Moreover, King George II's disdain for his late son was evident during Frederick's Spartan and undignified funeral. Fearing abandonment, Augusta took necessary steps. Shortly after Frederick's passing, Augusta received a standard letter of condolence from King George II. Her response was strategically crafted to beg for mercy, forgiveness, and most importantly, protection. This move demonstrated that Augusta was no longer naive and inexperienced, earning her the king's support. He appointed her as a regent to act in his absence until her son George, the heir apparent, became of age, but this would prove to be a double-edged sword. Augusta's ascendance to power. Freed from the constraints of her troublesome husband, Augusta found herself wielding immense influence at court for the very first time. However, things began to unravel almost immediately. She became overly protective of her children, keeping them away from the public eye and maintaining a veil of secrecy around their education, sparking suspicion among the courtiers. A scandalous friendship. Shortly after becoming a widow, Augusta's close relationship with John Stuart, the Earl of Bute, raised eyebrows and fueled rumours of an affair. Augusta's attempts to downplay their connection by insisting that Bute was visiting her alone, not anyone else in the household, only intensified the scandal. But the truth behind their relationship was far from what people expected. The illusion of a relationship with Bute. Contrary to the rumours of a romantic relationship, it's improbable that Augusta and John Stuart, the Earl of Bute, were involved romantically. Instead, Bute played a pivotal role in tutoring the future King George III. The arrangement also allowed Augusta to keep her son isolated, effectively maintaining control over him. It marked a significant shift as Augusta, who had been Frederick's puppet for years, began craving power, leading to a growing obsession, exerting total control over George. As George came of age, Augusta's control over him became absolute. She made nearly every decision on his behalf, including his place of residence and notably his choice of spouse. Augusta and Bute dissuaded George when he fell in love with a court lady and opposed his grandfather's attempts to arrange a royal marriage, instead determined to steer him towards her chosen bride. But as the saying goes, the best laid plans. Accession to power. In 1760, Augusta's father-in-law, the king, passed away suddenly at the age of 77, making her son King George III. Augusta now held the title of mother to the King of England, which, while advantageous, meant that she had to find a suitable wife for her son without delay, and her choice was unconventional. Choosing a naive bride. Augusta selected the 17-year-old Princess Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz as her new daughter-in-law. She took charge of drafting and accepting the marriage proposal, illustrating her level of involvement in George's affairs. The rationale behind choosing Charlotte was unsettling, since she hailed from a small German principality. Much like Augusta herself, everyone assumed Charlotte would be quiet and unassuming, unlikely to engage in political manoeuvring. However, Charlotte would prove to be far more resilient than anyone anticipated, exerting influence over Charlotte. Augusta wasted no time asserting her dominance over Charlotte. Shortly after their marriage, King George instructed Charlotte not to meddle, a directive likely influenced by Augusta. Augusta employed other methods to keep Charlotte in her place. A nightmare for Queen Charlotte. Despite being Augusta's choice as a bride, Charlotte received no maternal guidance from the Dowager. Augusta kept Charlotte isolated from many members of the English court, citing propriety and etiquette. She was reportedly distressed by Charlotte's higher rank in her presence as Queen of England, and jealousy appeared to be a significant motivator behind Augusta's actions, as she was not the reigning queen. Surveillance and isolation. Augusta maintained a network of informants in court, selecting attendants and ladies-in-waiting loyal to her. The individuals reported on Charlotte's every move to ensure Augusta's control over her daughter-in-law. If Charlotte attempted to establish her own allies, Augusta would reprimand her for showing favoritism. Augusta's meddling was relentless. Augusta's political influence continued to expand, and in 1762 she used her considerable power to install her favourite, the Earl of Bute, as the Prime Minister of England. However, this move backfired spectacularly. Public hostility. The public's disdain for the Earl of Bute was already considerable, but Augusta's association with him amplified their anger. Bute was perceived as Augusta's puppet, leading to pamphlets and public outcry demanding the impeachment of the king's mother. Augusta's reputation took a severe hit, and she was compelled to take drastic measures. The downfall of Augusta and Bute. The aftermath of this episode had lasting consequences for Augusta and Bute, as they found themselves vilified in history. Bute faced intense public animosity, with one commentator noting that Bute was hated with a rage there have been a few examples in English history. The disaster prompted Bute to resign from the Prime Minister position within a year, and Augusta retreated from open political involvements with her reputation in tatters. However, the greatest threat to her legacy was yet to emerge from within her own household. In the tumultuous world of Augusta, the mother of King George III, family discord and drama continued to plague her life, even as she faced her own health crisis. Her relationship with her children remained strained, with some defying her wishes, and her role in concealing her son's mental illness raised questions about her judgment. As her health deteriorated due to throat cancer, she orchestrated a dramatic farewell tour and unwittingly set the stage for a series of heated disputes between her eldest daughter and Queen Charlotte. Yet, the most devastating blow came with the shocking news of her daughter Caroline Matilda's imprisonment and exile, marking a dark legacy that Augusta couldn't have foreseen in her tumultuous journey through the royal courts of Europe. A strained relationship with her children. Surprisingly, despite King George III's deep affection and respect for his mother, the rest of Augusta's children harboured a strong dislike for her. Her eldest daughter, Augusta of Great Britain, actively befriended Queen Charlotte early on, mainly to vent her grievances about her mother. However, the most significant discord in Augusta's family came from an unexpected source. Witnessing her son's mental decline. In 1765, Augusta received devastating news. Her son, King George III, suffered the first of what would become recurring bouts of mental illness. These episodes, characterized by fever, insomnia, and cognitive impairment, raised concerns about his fitness to rule. The government even passed a Regency Act in response, although it was later repealed as George showed signs of recovery. Augusta, however, played a troubling role in this crisis, concealing a dark secret. In the face of George's deteriorating mental health, Augusta and her confidant, the Earl of Bute, kept his troubling condition hidden from his wife, Queen Charlotte. Augusta, driven by her need to control the narrative, failed to disclose the truth, and karma, however, had its way. Sons defying their mother. Augusta's poor relationship with her children led some of her sons to make independent marriage choices that defied her wishes. Her son William secretly married a dowager countess in 1766, while Prince Henry's marriages were considered beneath his station and further infuriated Augusta. Her diminishing control over her younger sons fueled her anger. Ensuring a royal marriage for her daughter. Desperate to ensure a suitable royal marriage for her youngest child, Caroline Matilda, Augusta had already arranged for her to marry the future King Christian VII of Denmark at the age of 13. In 1766, she finalised the marriage after Christian ascended the throne. Nightmare marriage for her daughter. Initially, Augusta might have viewed her daughter's royal marriage as a triumph, but it quickly turned into a horrific ordeal. King Christian was mentally ill and disinterested in his wife, leading to public quarrels within the Danish court. Augusta, never one to shy away, intervened. Upon hearing about the marital discord between the king and queen of Denmark, Augusta decided to meddle once again. She urged the King of Denmark to reinstate one of Caroline Matilda's favourite ladies who had been exiled, only to receive a resounding no. Augusta then advised her daughter to show more affection to her mentally ill husband, an approach that proved unsuccessful. Beginning in 1770, Augusta became aware of dark rumours surrounding her youngest daughter and Denmark's political intrigues. Concerned, Augusta, now in her 50s, visited her daughter to address the situation, hoping to exert her influence. Augusta entered Caroline Matilda's residence with the intention of talking some sense into her daughter, but she was met with a shock. Caroline Matilda appeared wearing breeches, a bold and scandalous choice for the time. Augusta voiced her displeasure, but for the first time in a long while, someone was about to challenge her. A defiant response. Augusta, who had spent decades getting her way, found herself facing resistance. Caroline Matilda, in response to her mother's objections, curtly retorted, "Pray, madame, allow me to govern my own kingdom as I please." Augusta was suddenly dealing with a defiant daughter. A farewell tour. In 1772, Augusta confronted a frightening reality. She was suffering from throat cancer that would ultimately claim her life. Due to her character, she didn't pass away quietly. Instead, she organised a farewell tour for herself and invited her eldest daughter to visit for an extended period, unwittingly setting the stage for dramatic events. Courtly turmoil in her final moments. Augusta's determination to make a lasting impression in her final months brought about turmoil within her court. Queen Charlotte, who had a history of strained relations with the Dowager, began to engage in heated disputes with her daughter. They spared over matters of etiquette, with Queen Charlotte mirroring Augusta's past criticisms, and the Queen even controlled when and how King George III could visit his sister. Augusta's legacy of stirring the pot continued, but the ensuing events were far from trivial. Her daughter's imprisonment. In February 1772, Augusta received shocking news that left her devastated. Her daughter, Caroline Matilda, had become embroiled in a scandalous affair with a courtier. This was no minor indiscretion, as the King of Denmark had taken action, arresting Caroline Matilda and imprisoning her in Kronenberg Castle. Augusta's life suddenly became engulfed in a dramatic turn of events, and it proved to be the ultimate blow. A final struggle. Augusta's strength dwindled rapidly upon learning of Caroline Matilda's scandal. For 10 days she sustained herself solely on cordials while grappling with anxiety over her daughter's fate. On February the 8th, 1772, at the age of 52, Augusta breathed her last breath. Later that year, the King of Denmark forcibly divorced Caroline Matilda and exiled her, tarnishing her reputation for the rest of her life. However, Augusta missed one final twist of fate, a dark legacy. Augusta never lived to witness the downfall of her royal daughter or the full extent of her royal son's madness, More than a decade after her passing, King George III succumbed to another episode of mental illness, demonstrating that his affliction was persistent. He eventually passed away in 1820, nearly half a century after Augusta, with his sanity severely eroded. Augusta's aspirations for her royal family had crumbled into dust. Remember, the stories of the past people shape our present and future. Keep exploring history, and I'll see you next time on Past People.